Welcome to the Dig Endurance Podcast, where we are all about digging deep and discovering the power of emotional resilience. I'm Aaron, and I'm joined by my brother Sean.
As endurance athletes and business owners, we have learned a thing or two about facing and overcoming adversity. We are here to share inspiring stories from our guests that will help you to find that inner strength when you feel like you are running on empty.
Are you ready? Let's dig in. Well, welcome everybody today to the Dig Endurance Podcast. Back with Sean today, and today, the last 3 weeks, we've been our own guests.
Yep, riding solo for a few weeks,
sharing our story. So today, we're excited to have our first guest for the first time, and that's Scott Farrow and Cade Berrett, and they are also hosts of the Pursuit of Property podcast.
Yeah.
And I know, Sean, you got a chance to guest on that with them. So for those of you out there with any real estate interest and whatnot, feel free to give that a look. And I understand you guys are coming up on your 100th episode here of the Pursuit of Property podcast.
How many years? 3?
3 years as of 2 days ago.
Yeah, we just hit the 3-year mark. There was talk about endurance. There's been some lapses in effort, but we've hit at least one consecutive year of posting at least one podcast a week.
That's awesome.
For the last year, and then the other 50 plus episodes happened kind of over the span of 2 years.
It's more work in it than you think.
Yes. Yeah. It's the consistency that we found was really hard to start up, but once we've kind of got in the groove of things, and having Jake's team and everybody has really helped. But finding that groove was
There's
really,
no stopping.
really hard.
It's just weekly.
Yeah.
It never stops.
And a cool shout out to you guys was Sean and I have talked about, with Forward and with, Dig and, some companies we're involved with. We've always flirted for a long time. We've been flirting with doing a podcast. And I think it was once Sean finally actually went on your guys's, it was like, we just finally need to do it. And just, there's no perfect starting point.
If these two idiots can do it, we can do
right.
it.
That's exactly what I told him. I was like, dude, if these guys can do it, please.
No.
Also, as podcast hosts, good job on the name pronunciation. I think this is the first time I've ever heard somebody pronounce both of our names correctly.
Okay.
Yes.
We always have people say either Scott Farrow or Cade Berrett or Kate Bennett.
Okay.
Bennett, yeah.
Like, we've heard some funny ones on Cade.
Noted.
Okay.
Yeah, so
Noted.
I'm glad I got the names pronounced correctly. You're good. Well, welcome. So again, Pursuit of Property podcast. For those that are listening and are interested, check that out. Glad to have you guys here today. We were chit-chatting a little bit before we started the podcast. And as we've told our listeners, dig is this idea of, whether it's business, personally, professionally, in family life, spiritually. I mean, the idea is we share stories here on Dig about, digging in and, overcoming various challenges, obstacles, adversity. And in particular, we love to focus on people's, well, frankly, just different stories, your own stories about, how you've experienced, hard times, adversity, pushback, hit ceilings, hit walls. And in sharing that story, how did you break through? How did you overcome? What kept you motivated to keep going and ultimately feel some semblance of success? I feel like no matter what degree of success I achieve, maybe I don't know if this is like a blessing or a curse, but I don't ever feel like I've truly achieved what I ever really want. And sometimes it's a good thing. I don't know if I ever feel like I've arrived, but I think the point is at some point you start to like feel a stride a little bit. You guys can probably speak to that a little bit and momentum, in real estate. And anyway,
we want to hear some stuff.
Tell us a little bit more about like yourselves, your background, just kind of like, I don't know, maybe start with like breaking into real estate. Like, what brought you into real estate? How'd you get started on that journey? I mean, and I guess it's worth saying to anyone who's listening, who's unaware, there's no doing real estate without perseverance or endurance. I mean, you basically, no matter what brokerage you work for, no matter, who you're with, what, in sales, ultimately, like, it's up to you and you alone, right? To drive your own business, to produce, and that pays the bills.
A lot of work up front.
Yeah.
Yeah. Never stops.
Yeah.
You want to share your story?
Yeah. So, I went the more traditional route when I was younger. I graduated high school, then went immediately to Fresno State. Both my parents work at Fresno State, so really coming out of high school, there was really no second thought. It was, hey, next step is go to school, get your degree, and you kind of figure it out from there.
Yep.
So it was about halfway through college. I declared a business degree, as most people do when they have no idea what the hell they want to do, right? So knocking out all, the BS classes, just kind of stringing along. And it was funny because do you also know Benny Clay?
I don't know.
Okay, so
he's a little bit younger than me. Benny is
Sean,
my age and my sister's age.
Oh, cool.
So I was at a networking event for Fresno State, and I had kind of picked up real estate here and there just through social media, a book or two. But it was like, dude, I'm 18, 19, just kind of figuring things out, right? So I'm at this networking event, do this spiel, this, that, and the other. And I had this lady come up to me because I had to do a speaking gig, and after I did the gig, she came up to me and introduced herself, and she was like, "Hey, I don't know why, but and she was really upfront. She was like, I'm a really religious person. God told me I had to come up here and talk to you after you got done speaking. I have no idea why, but I'm here, so I need to talk to you."
Okay.
That's interesting.
So perks of being beautiful.
Yeah.
Shoot,
Might have been the looks.
I'm this 18, 19-year-old talking, to this lady a lot older than me, and I'm like, first thought was, okay, what's going on here? Like, okay, sure, we'll have this conversation.
Where's this headed?
And it's just small talk. And she goes, so what's your plan? What are you doing? And this was the first time I had ever verbalized to anybody my interest in real estate. It was, it just kind of came out before I could, think about it. I was like, yeah, real estate's kind of piquing my interest. And she goes, well, believe it or not, my son, his name's Benny Clay. He has just started a real estate team over at a local brokerage, and they're looking for an assistant to add to the team. So here's his card. Call him up, and I'll let him know that I met you and talked with you. And I was like, sweet. So long story short, takes about a month or 2 months to get things ironed out with Benny and his business partner at the time, Jason Pritchard. But started chipping away as an admin assistant over at a local brokerage, Iron Key Real Estate, where Scott was licensed on that team, and have kind of grown since then. But that was kind of my first step into real estate.
While you were still in school?
While I was still in school.
Gotcha.
Yep.
Okay. And then that's where you started, and then from there, like, where has it gone from?
Yeah, so from there, started out as an admin assistant, did that for my last 2 years of college, so ended up graduating Fresno State with my bachelor's degree. After doing the assistant stuff, got licensed, did the courses, did that, got licensed, and since then since graduating, been full-time in real estate. I've been licensed, working a little bit on the retail side, and then also doing a lot of investment deals, flips, wholesales, hotels, rentals, that sort of stuff.
Okay.
So, yeah.
Very cool.
Yeah.
Awesome story.
Easy.
What about
Right.
your story a little bit? What got you started into it?
So what I like about Kids in My Stories is it's two very different ways of getting started, but we both started young.
You didn't have a woman who had heard from heaven up above who told her that she should talk to you too?
No.
That didn't happen?
Not
Okay.
quite. Not quite. No, not as good looking. No, Kate's family is in like school administration and whatnot, and I think they pushed Cade very much like, hey, education is really important. Yep. My family, I had two older siblings who had gone to school, and I had an older brother who's a year older than me who didn't go to school. And so when I graduated high school and I didn't get into the Naval Academy where I wanted to go, I kind of defaulted to going to Fresno State, and I was doing fine academically, but I was really not enjoying it. And my parents were like, hey, maybe consider going to community or dropping out and giving yourself like a year to figure out what you like. So I dropped to community. I paid my way for a couple semesters at community college and transferred a few different majors, and said to myself, like, I'm kind of wasting time and money jumping major to major. And so I'd already completed like 4 or 5 semesters of math. I had done a few semesters of
So you definitely knocked out your generals.
Right. So I hit a lot of computer science and like all these random things, but they don't all come together. So I'm not even close to any like associates or anything like that. But I spent a lot of time.
Yeah.
And I said, okay, I'm going to stop. I'm going to give myself a break. At the time, I was working in a restaurant, which was really not fun. I didn't like it, but I had a lot of experience. And I was doing graphic design because in high school, I developed that passion. And so I went to Cup of Joy, the coffee shop, and was serving coffee and then doing like some stickers for them and a couple things for them, right? Help design their bags and whatnot.
That's cool.
And I thought that was like really cool. I thought like, okay, I'm doing what I like. This is cool. But then when I dropped out of school and I was like, I don't really want to be a barista full time. I said, well, let's go shadow professionals. That's kind of what I thought I was going to do. So I set up a time with a plumber, with an electrician. I like being out and about. That's kind of my thing. So I thought, well, I'll just go into a trade. Like I like to work. I like to do stuff. They get paid well. Sounds like a good deal. And funny enough, I bumped into Benny Clay. He was one of the regulars. And Benny was coming through and Benny was like, hey, like, very talkative, and he was always asking me like, what are you doing? And I said, I gave up school. I'm going to shadow a plumber. I'm going to shadow an electrician. I said, what do you do? And he's like, oh, I'm a realtor. And I was like, what the hell? Like, what's a realtor do? He's like, oh, I sell houses. And I was like, that sounds kind of cool. And I'm like, well, can I come shadow you? Turns out right away he needs help with like graphic design and marketing. So I'm like, well, let me follow you around. And I start getting paid like $100 a week to tail him and pretty much just learn what he's doing. And I didn't ever go on the plumber or electrician day because I kind of was like, well, that doesn't sound great anymore. And right away, I meet Jason Pritchard the first day I'm on the thing, and they start forming a team, and they're like, hey, we want you to come on as our first like team member. And I was like, kind of sucked into the real estate world and kind of filling a void. And they started teaching me sales. They started showing me how to invest. They start giving me a little bit more like coaching on like, this is how you do your own deals. And, within like 2 years, I'm, selling houses fairly consistently. I flipped my first house. And then within like 2.5 years, we bought rentals. And I was like, oh, I'm in real estate, like legitimately. So I'm rounding my 5th year right now. And over that time, developed kind of a sales business where I sell like 20, 25 houses a year, and then the flipping and wholesaling side where we're doing like 20, 25 deals a year, and just kind of going that route.
Awesome.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Those are great stories.
That's impressive.
I love how, in both the stories, you said it was, Pritchard?
Jason.
Jason Pritchard. I think it's awesome when mentors are involved that actually genuinely like take interest in people. And actually, you said it's at a coffee shop, and it's so easy in a coffee shop to like, be dismissive, just come in, get your coffee and like come and go. And there's, a lot of people do that. I go religiously to Jack's Car Wash probably once or twice a week. And actually some of my favorite people, like my favorite conversations happen there. There's the workers at the car wash, but there's also just other people as our customers that come through.
They've had the same manager there forever.
They really have.
He's
the
best.
Yeah, he's great. But I just love that it's a guy or then a gal that took the time to like talk to you, kind of got you started on your journey, and like it was just like kind of a off the cuff conversation that kind of just like got that going. I think that's pretty cool.
And frankly, like I'll share this. I've told them personally, both. My dad even shared it with him. When I told my dad, who's very corporate world, he's always been there, done very well for himself, and had very consistent income. He was like, are you sure you want to do this sales thing? Like, there was always that hesitation. And his biggest concern was that I was going to get played by these two guys who are so generously helping you flip houses and do this. Yeah. And like 2.5 years in, my dad started lending money to them and like working with them. And my dad, one day at one of the like events that we held, he went up to him and was like, you guys have helped my son so much. Like, I have to sincerely apologize. I thought you guys were potentially nefarious actors. And like, legitimately, Cade and I started the podcast because we were like, dude, we have a head start because two guys gave us everything they knew for free. How do we give as many people as we can everything we know for free? Because we don't own any of the knowledge that we have.
Yeah, I've known Benny forever. I've known him since I was like 7.
Yeah.
Went to elementary school with him.
Everybody
He's my
knows
sister's
Benny.
age. I mean, so when I walked into your office, I was like, what what the heck? And then hearing the story, it kind of brings back like what we were talking about on the podcast with you guys. You know, when we were talking about like your circle and serving others and being willing to like take someone on and mentor them like that. I mean, the value behind that for your own name, not to mention other people, it's just max level.
Well, Sean and I, you know, we did talk about this a couple episodes ago. I do feel that, and I think anyone will tell you, that's, you know, particularly in business, like, I think having a mentor is very key and very important. I mean, obviously there's for a few reasons, but chief of which is they've learned a lot of lessons that can help you avoid those same pitfalls. And if they've taken a genuine interest in you, they will obviously care enough for you to help you avoid those said pitfalls, save you a lot of money, save you a lot of time. In my experience in business, I've had the ones that your dad was concerned about, where
well, my older brother, who's a year older than me, he had fallen victim to a few interesting traps. And so,
well, for me,
it's a sincere thing to fear, right?
It is.
But there are good, genuine actors.
Well, and
definitely,
and it's not even necessarily. I mean, you know, your dad was concerned like about like a scheme. I mean, in my situation, like I've had past, you know, employers or mentors that like they were interested at first, and it's like once you're making me money, then you start asking them questions and you realize, it was really more about you than it was about me, wasn't it? You know what I mean? And it sounds like these mentors that you've got, you know, they've really helped to push you guys along in your career and do take genuine interest in you. And it helps them, but it also has helped you guys too. But
to this day, we are still extremely close friends with both of those guys.
That's cool.
And like, I think I'll say that like I would take a bullet for either of those dudes.
Yeah.
Like I owe so much allegiance to them, and they've never ever once asked me to do anything that wasn't like upstanding and morally right, and they've never asked for a penny in return. And so like to me, they've earned my loyalty for life.
Yeah.
I've helped people, and I'm like, you know, trying to like mimic what I've seen. But the shortcut to business success is get a mentor.
Yeah, I love that. I think, well, business for sure, and even otherwise, like some of my best mentors too have just been, frankly, you know, like you said, just good people that, whether it's, you know, in church or family wise, I've also gotten my share of good advice, you know, in those spheres too. And so I love that part of your story. And so once you were brought in, I mean, you guys just started selling houses right away, became millionaires, and the success was instant. I'm sure once you guys started selling houses.
That's how it works.
Overnight success.
Yeah.
That's how I drive a BMW, baby.
Yeah,
dude.
Nothing to chat about, I guess, huh?
Yeah.
That's the whole podcast, man.
There it is.
Let's hear the negatives.
Yeah. What?
Let's hear the downhill.
I thought about it when we were coming on the podcast. It's funny because everybody says business is not like a sprint; it's a marathon.
Yeah.
And it fits in with your guys' theme of endurance training. Business really is. It's like the people who do well, and we just had a guy come on our podcast, Chef Cameron, and he was saying that the recipe to success is, you know, incremental steps over time, right? Mm-hmm. And so to us, like, we had early peaks and early valleys, and over time you just have to work through both of those. And so you were talking about in that endurance run training that you run the downhills and the flats and walk the uphills, and that's kind of how you have to train in business. You know, we had, like, I'll share my section, is like the first 6 months I sold like $2 or $3 million of real estate, and so that turns into like $40,000. Well, for an 18 or 19-year-old, that's a lot of money. I immediately spent all that money, and I started in like summertime. By December, I closed my last deal. Hardest deal of my life was that December deal, and then I didn't sell a house until that following July, and I had spent all the money, and I owed the IRS like $10,000 when my taxes came around, and I had to play some funny games and figure that out, and I went completely dead broke, living outside of the house, and had to call my dad for like $700 to pay my rent. And went back to the restaurant industry, had to humble myself. It was like a terrible time. I ended up breaking up with my current wife when we were dating. And I said, like, I need to focus on getting through this right now. And she wanted more time. And I said, I can't give you time. I need to do this. And I had to make amends like later that year and say, like, look, this is where I was at, and here's where I'm at now. And if you're willing to look at me again, like, I'm interested. And it works out, right? Everything has a plan. But you know, I hit an early success, and then, you know, beginner's luck wears off, and then you spend all your money, and you kind of end up surprised at how quickly.
Can we get a
the money
list
goes.
of what you bought?
Yeah. The last
itemized.
You want the last thing? I'll tell you the last thing that I
Was
bought.
it a bike?
It was not a bike, but we did reference the bike. When I bought the bike, she said, "This reminds me of X."
There it is. Do not use my name, please, ever for anything.
The last $1,000 I spent prior to going broke, I bought a $700 kit of golf clubs. Do you know how dumb you have to be to spend $700 of your last $1,000 on golf
I'm sorry.
clubs?
I thought you were gonna say-
ever.
I was gonna say. I thought you just how dumb you have to be to golf. I thought that's what you meant. Sorry.
No. No, I love golf. Don't tell me it's dumb. I can't. But no.
We always harass our family about. They're like, no golfing.
We have two brothers-in-law that are like, hey, you coming? No,
we're not.
To each his own. But yeah, bought the golf clubs. I mean, it was just dumb stuff like that, man. And
That's so funny.
so that was a weird time.
Didn't hear that in the intro story at all. That's that's a big deal because when you're that young and you just go up and then straight back down, that's exactly what I did. My first job was at Wild Water Adventures. And as I say, it wasn't $40,000, but let me tell you what I did with that paycheck. That's I don't know, $700, whatever. It was gone in an hour. I was buying my friends food and gas, filling up their tanks. I mean, what you name it. It was just. Anyways, I can't imagine the $40,000 thing, but that's funny.
Parse through that for a second. I mean, $40,000. I mean, it's a good bit of money. I mean, and this is the reality. Is I don't think it's unique to real estate. I think in business, just like in life, there are ebbs and flows. There's windfalls, and then there's bad months. And I think what I've had to learn too, even from not just personally, but from managing a business standpoint, is you have to save for the rainy day, so to speak. And it's not just, I'm not just talking about just a savings account in general, but I think part of that lesson I'm sure you learned. It's never fun to hit rock bottom in your wallet. I think everyone who's young has been there. I would think.
Well, right after success.
And that's the other thing is you're feeling good. You're like, hey, I've made some sales. I'm on top of this. So
I'll throw you off.
How did that feel? Yeah, I mean, to go from man, I'm getting the hang of this. I'm making some sales, and all of a sudden it's like, oh crap! I've blown through this.
Yeah, how did you
contrast those?
Yeah.
Contrast.
How did you realize it and put yourself together?
Contrast
the wife, the whole.
Contrast Scott at the start of the sales and feeling good to Scott, when the bank hits nothing and breaking up with the girlfriend and stuff.
There's a ton of people in situations like this.
Yeah, I meet a lot of people, and I'm like, look, dude, you're not alone. This is a normal stage of success. It's hard. Jason always jokes when he first met me. He always said I have blind confidence. He's like, you know what? You are so confident that you have zero results to back you, but you are right there that you can do it. And he's like, I prefer that over the guy who's too concerned to even put himself out there.
Yeah.
But he's always joked to me I have to kind of rein you back a little here, bring you back just to make sure that you stay within the realm. And I have some people in the business who are like, hey, when you were young, I didn't like you. You were really arrogant. And I look back, I might have been arrogant, but damn, I did find some success. And whatever I was doing, I wouldn't change it because it worked, right?
Yeah.
What happened, though, was I went from being on top of the world, strutting my walk. I bought 8 suits. That was one thing I did. I don't fit in any of them. I was 150 pounds at the time. And, because everybody told me everybody was like, you have to look the part. And I'm like, I look super young now. I'm 25 now. Imagine how I looked when I was 18. And so
6.
I lost all my money, right? And I still go to counseling today. And it's still something that I deal with today, which is I'm very much a results-driven person. And so when I'm not selling a lot of houses, I think to myself, I'm not worth as much in that moment. And it's hard because I didn't have that before. Before, regardless of how many homes I sold, I was that guy. I'm that dude.
Yeah.
So that changed me a lot. The benefit is that it kept some humility in sight. And so now... thank God I went broke when my bills were $1,000 a month.
Yeah.
Because if I went broke now, it would be much harder to resolve that. You can't just go get a restaurant job and then it's all poof and gone.
For sure.
But a lot of it came back to then also being okay, it's not about how many homes you sold. It's not about how much you make. It's about how you treat people, how you treat everything that you have coming in, right?
Yeah.
I'm going to put some away for the rainy day. I'm going to put some away for... fun stuff, right? Because I'm still young. I want to have fun, and then
bikes.
all that.
But the reality is, in that moment, your back was against the proverbial wall. I mean, you had to leave the girlfriend.
No, I was in the fetal position, up against a physical wall in the corner.
Yeah,
it was shattering.
Yeah, but it's also motivating.
It was.
So where did it go from there? I mean, what was,
The biggest thing that happened from there was that it's that whole dig, like what you guys were talking about on your first episode that I could listen to. It was like, there's like a point in your life where you decide either you're going to stay here forever or I'm going to change. And the first steps are the hardest because you don't know what direction you step in.
Yeah.
Right.
So
we discussed that.
I called my dad and I said, well, I need $700 to pay my rent to be okay. And he said, okay, come to my house. We'll talk about if I give you the $700, how you're going to pay me back in 2 weeks.
That's good.
And the steps were like, you're going to go give your resume to every restaurant in town. You're going to go interview and you're going to have a job before this date. So I did that, and I actually got into Roost Chris, which was a great blessing because that's fairly good tips.
It is.
And immediately started working there. I would wake up in the morning at the start at like 7, but towards the end, more like 8 or 9, I would go work in my real estate job nonstop, knowing that I hate going to the restaurant so much. The only way out of here is to work hard. And then in the evenings, I'd go bus tables. And people don't know this, but I'm a germaphobe. And so like the idea of being the person who has to go grab dirty dishes sucks. And I hate it. And here I am thinking I'm some salesperson, and I didn't even make server at a restaurant, right? Yeah. And so it was a motivator. And like at the end of the day, if I did well, I would be able to go get a Robert Tito's burrito at 1 a.m, eat that burrito. I play video games until 2, and then I go to bed and I wake up at 7. And
those are the days.
Robert Tito's, huh?
Yeah, baby. And I'd rinse and repeat. And that's, I did that
and I
for
used to do that at 1 a.m.
Well, kudos. I mean, I like the story that you shared about your dad too, because, and obviously you had to have been humble enough to listen. Too many times, too many people in that situation. Well, see, but that's the thing. Like, even it blows my mind, shocks the heck out of me, that sometimes people even being broke enough is not enough of a lesson for them. I can't relate to that. That's enough of a lesson for me being at that point. But like, what people will do sometimes in that situation is like, hey, mom or dad, just give me the money. And if they don't, it's like, instant blame mom and dad, instant, you're the bad guy, you're not helping me, I'm in a rough spot. Well, yeah, but you got yourself in the rough spot. And your dad, who's not, sometimes people confuse this or swap this with like, oh, my dad's just piling on me when I'm in a hard spot. No, your dad loves you. Your dad wants to help you avoid being there again. And if he's going to do that, he's not just going to give you the money. He's also going to teach you that, hey, I don't want you to be here again, so you're going to pay me this money back and da-da-da-da-da-da.
Can I also share an interesting little point here?
Yes.
I led when I asked my dad if he could help me. He asked how much. He said, put together a list, send it to me, and show me why you need each dollar. And my starting number was $3,500. And my dad called me and was like, I'm not giving you $3,500. How much is your rent and how much is 1 week's food? And then next week, if you don't have any money, we'll figure out how to get you through the next week. And I laughed because I was like, oh, dang, I really thought that was going to work. So even then,
Lesson learned.
Yeah, for sure. That's good. My second thought is, do you guys follow Ryan Serhant at all?
Yeah,
in real estate. I'm not going to say I'm like a huge fan of his, but there are some things, little nuggets from him. I've read his book, Sell It Like Serhant. Yeah. And there is definitely something I can relate to in my experience in business that I don't know. I'm throwing this out here cautiously, but it can work for some people. He actually does advocate to do things that make you feel like you have your back against a wall. Sometimes he actually said, so his story was like when he was going out to New York, to be this breakthrough broker, he was just getting punch after punch, just getting put down by, these little old ladies that were better brokers than him and ones that couldn't even speak English. And when he started to finally have some success, at one point he just said, how do you say it? I bought something that was putting myself out there a little bit, but I did it purposefully, knowing that I'd have to get the next deal to support what I did. Now, some might say that that's like, well, that's bad financial advice, a bad financial decision. But for him, his whole thing is it puts my back against the wall and it pushes me. So I think that that advice, but like you said it earlier, there's a time where that advice I think is good advice. And even for Ryan Serhant, that was he was just getting started. I would never advocate for that kind of advice if we've got families of 4 kids. I'm not saying put your mortgage on the line, go do all this stuff. But there is something to be said when you're young and getting started to if you do some things that reasonably stretch yourself and that hold you accountable, hey, if I'm going to earn this, I got to go work my tail off then to get it and make it happen. That can work for people.
I feel like
I
agree with this. For me personally, I feel like that can be translated for me and probably quite a few others easily. You know me. When do I work really well? When do I really bring it?
Well, when something's on the line, most typically.
Okay. When I am really accountable,
Yeah.
maybe when I've done something wrong,
Yeah.
maybe when I've put myself, I don't know, up against the wall,
Yeah.
I find myself so motivated because I'm like, this is not what I want.
Yeah.
This is not what I personally feel I deserve. And I know this is not who I am.
Yep.
And so, and again, these are short-term things. And yes, we all learn our lessons. But naturally, for some reason, I tend to kind of agree with that mentality. Not for everyone, just as you said.
Right.
But when there's a lot of paperwork on my desk, Aaron, that's when I come in. I'm just like, all right, 1, 2, 3. You know what I mean?
I think when it becomes unhealthy, especially, is like, even Ryan Serhant says, like, it's being able to get that mentality over time when your back isn't against the wall truly, and to still have that motivation.
You're just being uncomfortable.
It's doing it a couple times, so you have the vibe, you have the feeling, you know what that feels like, and then working so hard you never have to feel like that again. Yeah. That's really the idea. It's not to keep putting your financial neck on the line. You don't want to do that. You know what I mean?
I never intentionally do it.
Yeah,
I just kind of find myself there sometimes.
The other thing you threw out a nugget I want to make sure we don't pass over is your results. They do not define you. I think that's important. And you and I can relate in this regard. We talked 1 or 2 podcasts ago.
You literally said the same thing. Results-driven guy.
I am also very results
word for word
oriented. I mean, I live and breathe the numbers, the results. Where we're going. I mean, it's not unhealthy to track those things. It's productive. I mean, you have to set goals. We talked about how you guys now are starting to train with Sean. I mean, you got to set those goals. What's the race? What's the time? What do you want? If you don't, you're aimless and you're not really working toward anything. Business is no different. I mean, but at the same time, you and I have been guilty of this. Is that when the results aren't achieved, you can't be so bad on yourself that you feel like you're a failure every time you're not achieving results. That's an unhealthy place to be. You know what I mean?
We always say that so there's certain people who are wired this way, and when you're like that, you are your worst critic. Nobody will ever say something bad about you if you make $500,000 in a year. But if you had set the goal that you wanted to make 600 and you only make 500 and you beat the shit out of yourself, it's like you spend all this time doing what? Being unproductive when nobody else in your life is going to look at you and say, oh, you failed.
Sure.
So you have to be careful about how much you tie your self-worth to your results.
Right. Yeah, I mean, you have to that right there. Your self-worth is not defined by your results.
Yeah.
We're all people. We all have worth, right? I mean, I would hope that people are open enough to feel that's the case. But at the same time, we're all trying to become more. We're all trying to improve ourselves. And this actually, we're in the business of providing ABA therapy for children on the spectrum. And we did talk about this in our episodes. If you look at like our treatment plans for these kiddos and data tracking over time, the general trend should always be this, but it's very normal to see kids fall off and then come back on and then fall off again. But again, as long as they're making this trajectory over time, that's normal. That doesn't apply to just kids on the spectrum. That should be anybody. Real estate, hey, you're going to have an off month, but then, hey, great sales the next month. And you should be able to understand and appreciate there's going to be the peaks, there's going to be the valleys. I think it's more about the overall trajectory, but at the same time, your results don't define who you are or the kind of person you are. But being focused on them at the same time, it's good to be motivated to improve, but you shouldn't feel like, in those moments you're not achieving them, that makes you worth any less, I think is the key thing. You know what I mean?
You should share your story too.
I was just going to ask,
a very interesting one.
Let's hear it.
Yeah. So I come fresh out of college, May of 2021, I graduate. And I had already been, obviously, in the real estate space for those last 2 years of college, absorbing information, just really super, super motivated. And I graduate, and it was no question, I'm hitting this full time. So I graduate, and I'm like, dude, it's game over. Now that I don't have school in the way and I can focus on this full time, dude, I'm gonna be rolling in it. I'm gonna be freaking balling. I'm gonna be ultra successful. I'm like, dude, now that school's gone, boom, I'm chilling. And then June goes by, July goes by, August goes by, September goes by, and October goes by, and nothing. Zeros all across the board.
And had you sold while you were in school, or you had not started selling yet?
I think I had sold one or two houses.
But only dabbling, but like dabbling.
Only one or two transactions when I was in school.
So when you're first going at it full time, you're having zero sales for like 4 months.
I'm skidding. I'm on fumes. I'm like, it's zeros all across the board. So I was a little bit grateful in the fact that I had put a little bit of money away from working odd jobs, and obviously, working a little bit as the assistant, right, while I was in school,
right.
Saving a little bit of money that, could get me by. But then, the money's dwindling, months are going by and not bringing in money. I found myself in the same spot Scott did. I'm like, dude, I gotta, I've got my tail tucked between my legs. My pride is shot down because I was thinking I'm going to be this big baller coming out of graduating, and I go get a restaurant job, and it's
magic.
Absolute.
This is magic. Watch.
Yeah. And I get it in October.
Where did you go?
Mid to late October. I started working at my buddy and his family-owned Mexican restaurant in downtown Fresno on Fulton Street.
Okay.
That can be
Los Ponchos.
That can be a fun spot sometimes of the day.
Very fun spot, especially when I'm getting off at midnight, 1 a.m.
There you go.
On
Fresno.
Doing the lonely walk to the parking garage, 4 nights a week.
Oh.
And dude, that's where it really, one, very humbling, and two, just really, it's rock bottom. It's like, dude, I thought, my worth is here, but now all my, a large part of my sphere's graduated. They've locked in these jobs. They're getting paid, a good amount. They've got steady income. And here I am, and when people are asking me how work's going, I'm kind of like, it's going, and I'm actually working a restaurant, part time.
Nothing has happened, right? That you thought was happening. Nothing.
But I told myself, this is what I'm going to do. And yes, this situation is ass. I don't like working in the restaurant. I don't like working for 8 hours on my feet after working full time in the office, trying to scratch and find a deal. But you know what? I'm going to come in here, and I'm going to be the best server that this restaurant has ever seen, and the best server that I can be. Day in and day out, when I wipe the tables, I'm not missing
Good on you.
any piece of that table. I'm coming in, and I'm going to be the best freaking server anybody has ever seen, day in and day out, and I'm going to come in tomorrow, and I'm going to do it again.
Okay.
And I kid you not, it was less than 2 months after picking up that job that I close my biggest investment deal that I still close to this date. I lock in a deal and end up closing it before the end of the year for $60,000.
Can we go back though?
Yeah.
You missed one spot too.
Huh.
Within 2 weeks of this guy getting the restaurant job, he put a house under contract.
Yeah.
No contracts for 5 months. Gets a job. 2 weeks later, gets business. And I had the same thing happen when I got mine.
Nice.
Right at Ruth's Chris, 2 weeks in, I put a $30,000 land deal together.
Yeah.
And I don't know, we've talked about a little bit of some factors that go into that. And I think a part of it was when you've gone that long without making money, when you're talking to people or talking to sellers, talking to clients, trying to put a deal together, there is a little bit of desperation, or we call it a little bit of commission breath that can come off, right? Because you're in that desperate spot. You come across a little bit more needy. But, we always look back and laugh. There's no simple answer to say, 2 weeks in, we pick up this job, and boom, after 6 months of no money, no contracts, just like that.
And it's like a guaranteed trend. We know like 4 or 5 people who no deals. Second job, success immediately.
Well, and even
That's
like,
interesting.
I don't
It is.
know.
It's magic.
If it's me, so obviously there's the financial need to go. You guys decided, hey, work in restaurants, which I get it. You got to make some money somehow, but also like do something. You got in business as an entrepreneur, and in real estate, I do believe you're an entrepreneur. I mean, put yourself outside of the box. I mean, the name of the game in real estate is you got to meet people. You got to talk to them. They got to trust you. I mean, so. I mean, I guess correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm also thinking at least in a restaurant, at least you're meeting people. At least you're talking to people.
You
I'm
get
not
FaceTime.
I'm not sitting here saying that you brokered deals, or even necessarily got sales, in those couple months when you did it. But I mean, certainly that's better than nothing. For all you know, I mean, if you were to mention and someone asked you, like you mentioned at the coffee shop, I mean, what are the chances someone's like, hey, what are you doing?
Yeah.
Oh, hey, I actually sell homes. Here's my card. I mean, at least it like creates some opportunities to somewhat get FaceTime or meet people. And certainly I think that, again, I guess I'm mentioning this because I feel like there are, especially in the younger generation, a lot of people who would just say, I'm just going to keep grinding and sailing and that's it, or even give up. But like, you decided, hey, I need to make some money somehow, so I'll do this on the side. But two, like, it at least gets you exposure and gets you talking to people. And like, I mean,
that's how I met these two guys.
Yeah.
I mean, now we chat all the time, right? I'm all about meeting people and talking and networking. I could have nothing to do with anything, and I'm still going to be like, I know some guys. Let's set a meeting. Nothing might come, but if something does, like, it was worth the 400 times I tried it.
Yeah.
You never know what's going to come from it.
The second thing you touched on, I think, is super important, and I love that you shared this part of your story, is be good at what you're doing today.
Yeah.
Now. I
That is not
have
easy.
so many employees that are just doing this job to check the box. So frustrating.
Yep.
Whatever your job is today, restaurant worker, whatever it is, like you said, however you said it, I loved it. I'm going to be the best at cleaning the tables. I'm going to be the most helpful waiter. I'm going to be here and be the best one on this team. I'm going to make this restaurant the best. That should be your mentality, whatever you're doing, wherever you are. That was some of the best advice I got when I was younger in my first jobs, is do the best at what you're doing.
One of my
today.
jobs here is answering the phones, entering stuff in the computer. And when Aaron assigned this to me based on my personality and whatever else he thought would work out, I was like, okay, like, I can do this. I've done this before. And I'd say I take pride in my work. I would say that I go in there and I'm like, I even joke with him. I'm like, I did this, I got this person, I convinced this person to do here, and this is going great, and it's worked out great. I enjoy the reviews.
That's the mundane aspect. But
you know?
but Sean also talks to our people. I mean, he really is the sales, if you want to call it that, side of our business. It's intake is what we call it in, behavioral mental health. But like, at the end of the day, before him, it's just, spreadsheets all over the place, not tracking leads or calls or people coming in. And again, it kind of because it was in the care of people that weren't focused on what they were doing today. So we made some adjustments, brought Sean into that role from some other things. And yes, it's exactly what you said, but in our world where it's just like he's doing the best we've ever had with organizing spreadsheets and never missing a call and always returning those calls within 24 hours. And yes, it
just
goes,
makes you feel good.
It goes the same thing. Be the best at what you're doing today. And not to mention, I'm assuming that restaurant guy, whoever the family member was, would have no problem, I'm sure, referring you on or for something else, or maybe, or if someone came to the restaurant, hey, I'm looking to buy a house. I have a thought. They probably think of you. Well, it tends to be when you're the kind of person that is working hard for people and trying to be the best at what you're doing, those sorts of things happen. But anyway, I love that you shared that.
Yeah, and I think that I think inherently just having that little mindset shift after getting over, the woe is me, I gotta go and, untuck my tail between my legs and, check my pride at the door, is that immediately translates not only that I believe, looking back, not only immediately translated into my real estate business, having that same mindset click and saying, okay, now I'm coming in at the beginning of the day and I'm going to be the best, person that is making these calls and doing this, that, and the other. But I think it translated into, that click into, just personal life and personal relationships, right? Like, I'm going to be the very best son I can be. I'm going to be the very best boyfriend or husband that I can be. I'm going to be the best brother that I can be, right? And I think that was pivotal for me. Having that mindset shift there, looking back, I think it's probably one of the biggest shifts that was made, because that inherently translated into every other aspect of your life.
Well, you both took ownership of your situations. I mean, that's the reality. I think the unfortunate thing in today's world is so many people just get stoked in this blame game, or you could have just as well said it's the economy. That's why I'm not getting the sales, or well,
behind closed doors we said it.
Well, all the things. But at the end of the day, I mean, you took ownership of your situation, and until you do that, whatever the situation is, you're not going to get the results you want or go where you want to go. You know what I mean? So today, I mean, you guys, that's your starting up, and then I'm sure now today there's never any slow moments. You guys are it's perfect sales all the time, or you still?
Oh well, we did a podcast episode 2 weeks ago. We just lost $27,000 on one of our rental properties.
I did see that. Yeah.
And so
the downs of deals or something, whatever it is that you said. I saw that,
which has been, I think, collectively probably our biggest loss yet so far in real estate. Losing $27,000 on a property we also paid $27,000 for. Yep. But the very following week, and literally a couple, less than 2 weeks after, we finally got that offloaded and, cut our losses there, we closed a deal we were joint venturing together that literally almost down to the dollar made up that money we lost 2 weeks before.
We made more, actually.
Oh, that's good.
Yeah. So and we sat there and laughed, and we were like, dude, we just had to cut these checks out of our bank accounts to, pay back our private money lenders and make sure this deal that we lost a crap ton of money on is made whole. And here we are, a week and a half later,
that same private money lender lends on a deal that makes us the money back.
That's not an easy place to be, where you're that comfortable, or even to the extent that you're laughing when you're losing money like that. But still making up money elsewhere. Well, and it is. That's the thing. Like, talk about getting comfortable or getting in a place, like, emotionally and mentally, maturity wise.
Oh, dude.
Where you're in a job like yours, where that's just part of the deal.
You're comfortable being uncomfortable.
With that.
Well, hey, and I'll say this property we had when we first bought these. We ended up buying 9 houses in a span of
2 weeks.
2 weeks out of state, and we are now down to 5. But talk about we had some footing under us. We had started to make some more money, but we're still sitting there at the time 21 and 22 years old, and then having this reality check of, hey, property managers coming in and we owe a $12,000 invoice for.
It was 23.
It was 12. Probably was another one 2 months later. But
we owed
the very first one.
$23,000, and I remember exactly where I was. I was driving down Cedar Avenue, approaching Herndon, and I get an email saying a balance due. I opened it, and I swear I almost crashed my car when I saw it, because I almost passed out. Man. And I called him, and we had both left for the day, and we said, we're meeting in the office at 10 minutes.
We're turning back.
We went back
around.
And there was a lot of bullets being sweat that day, because we did not have $23,000 to pay. But we were able to negotiate it with the property management, fork up some cash, made it work.
And it's still, but you're right, it's still sitting there, like, when I look back at it, I'm like, at 21 and 22 years old, having to cut a check out of our accounts. We had just started to get our footing underneath. Here's us cutting a check for $10,000 each to go take care of this property that, lo and behold, we end up losing even more money on, right?
I feel like these stories, I love this too, because, I mean, I can relate to the same, when I'm, just getting started with Sean and I with behavioral mental health business, and our checking account's not looking much different than this. And this is during COVID that COVID happened soon after I had gotten this business going and such. And I think you kind of touched on this a little bit earlier. It's like, there's kind of this fear that comes with, whether it's, you guys sell real estate, we're in the business of owning businesses, but the reality is, like, there is a sense of security with having a salary and a job. And, like, some people just need that. I think it's more than the money. I think it's even mentally and emotionally for people. They just have to have a salary job, because the idea of like getting this massive invoice, and I've been there as well, and it's just like, oh, shoot, like, and then, but you, like you said, you figured it out and you navigate it, you negotiate it, you may break it up into payments, but
it's
Which
life.
we also did.
Yeah, we did. I mean, the way that you learn to live with it is that the same year, or like the very next year, I was on a flight home from a week trip with my family in Mexico, and I got wired $65,000 for a deal I spent maybe 10 hours on. So it's like you ride the lows, reminding yourself that you have highs.
There's highs
and that you don't know when the high is going to come, but you keep doing the same action, you know, like what you talk about in all the training. Follow the steps no matter what, if you want to or not, and the results follow.
For sure. And I mean, like, the reality is, some people, you know, it's almost like they're forever skeptical, because I mean, the reality is, like, I think what I've learned, you know, I'm 36 now, but there is no perfect time really to get into a job that's purely, you know, commission based, or that's
You'll never be ready.
Your own business. No, you really won't. There's always going to be those back against the wall moments. There's always going to be those almost zero in your bank account moments. If you're going to do this, and again, Sirhan actually touches on this in his book too, that no matter how well you plan will be your reality at some point. Be prepared for those moments. And honestly though, how good does it feel when you overcome them though, and you navigate it, and then, like, you know, you've learned from some of those lessons. And again, I think the caveat is, I would never advocate for someone to make, you know, dumb decisions. Don't go into bankruptcy. Don't go into crazy debt. That's not what I'm saying. What I am saying though is, you have to accept that, like what you said, there is no perfect time. Those challenges will come no matter what. And you just have to be resilient enough to, you know, dig in and overcome it and get through it. Yep. The other thing I love about your story is you started young. I hate this narrative that is an old school narrative that I do. I mean, listen, you should get experience in anything for sure. It doesn't have to be 20 years worth of experience. I mean, you know, I you know, I got my MBA 2013. I worked a corporate job for, you know, 5 years. I mean, and I learned plenty. Honestly, also a lot of things that were frankly dumb that people do in the corporate world. And I'm like, I can do better than this. You know, so it's like, you know, some things you learn, like, yeah, that's good. But other things you're like, why do they do it this way? And I think I can do it different. So I love this. I love that you guys started, you know, young. I mean, didn't graduate, you know, graduated fresh out of college and went and did it. And like, what's your advice that way? Like, you know, in the regard of, I mean, I guess it's twofold. Like, the perfect time to go out and start selling, or, you know, whether it's real estate or get into business, or, hey, I need to be older before I can, you know, start, you know, learn the lessons and really do what I need to do. What do you guys think about that? I mean, I think your experience speaks to both those things a little bit.
First and foremost, my thing would be, surround yourself with the people who are doing what you want to be doing. And
there it is.
You know, and especially, you know, in college, right? Obviously, college is notorious for, you know, screwing around, partying, and doing stupid stuff, and that's kind of the thing, right? Especially, you know, for people who are 18, 19, 20, right? And for younger people who are looking to get started in entrepreneurship, or started in real estate, or started in sales, you have to look at your circle. Is your circle going out and partying every weekend? Is your circle lazy and not working? You need to change up your circle. And, you know, there may be relationships severed, or there may be friends lost. But if that's something you want to succeed in, and you want to start young and get started on the right path, you've got to look at your circle and surround yourself with the people who are doing what you want to be doing.
I like that. That's good advice. We talked a little bit about circle of who you surround yourself with too, a couple podcasts ago as well. Yeah.
Your circle means a lot.
Yeah. I mean, it's like you said, it could take you down.
We talked about this on your podcast,
I really do believe it's nowhere in between. I do believe either your circle brings you down or it builds you up.
Oh, absolutely. There's no middle.
It's one way or the other. What about you? What do you think, you know, along those lines?
I guess generally, don't wait. Like, my thought process was that when I started, I had no money, I had no tangible skills except a pretty good work ethic. And like, when the timing's right, the timing's right. And typically that's like right now. So if you feel like I need to do this, you should probably just do it. I look back, I would not have gotten into real estate had I not asked the question, had I not dropped out of Fresno City, had I not dropped out of Fresno State, had I not gotten into the school that I dreamed of going to. So accept the fact that like the reason why you're not where you're at is just because this is how the path is going to go. And so from here, the question is, do I want to work the rest of my life in a salaried job, doing the same thing that I hate, blah, 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 or do I want to do something I love? And like, that doesn't mean you have to be a business owner, but if you feel like the job you're in sucks and you're only there for the money, like that's not enough reason to stay.
Yeah.
Quit, be done,
Love it.
move on.
Yeah. No, my takeaways here, and I agree. It's not, a lot of examples in business, but these apply, I think, to across anything.
They do.
I love what you said. I do think that generally, if the nudge is there for a reason. I've learned to follow those nudges, and I also agree with you to follow them quickly, because there's something to be said of your passion also having to be behind what you're doing. And generally speaking, I think I found where that nudge is there, it's also my passion has generally nudged me there, not just because there's also opportunity there. And so I think that some of my takeaways today are accept the peaks and the valleys. I think you guys have definitely shared some powerful stories about, that the journey, particularly in business ownership, but it also can be elsewhere, is just because you make the decision to get into it, there really is no perfect time, and accept that there is going to be ups and downs, peaks and valleys in the journey, but condition yourself mentally and emotionally to be healthy and okay through that, and to not beat yourself up when things aren't going your way. Mm-hmm. Do what you're doing well. Don't be so focused on the future that you're not doing well today what it is you've got in front of you. But you can maintain both. You can still have those goals while still doing well what you're doing today. And you guys shared a lot about your network. I think the people that got you started and the people, like you said, that you surrounded yourself with, you can't discount, I think, how important good mentors and frankly people that like support and encourage you are in the journey, whatever that journey is.
Yep.
So choose carefully, choose wisely, and even I like what you said. If you need to lose some people, then lose them. I hate this idea that sometimes people think that like, well, we've been friends for 20 years. Yeah, he's a crappy friend. For 20 years,
Yeah.
So lose them.
Yep.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So
real.
and sometimes that's what you got to do. You know what I mean?
Move forward.
What about you? Any takeaways beyond those?
It's going to be hard for me to follow because you literally just took every word out of my mouth. But no, this applies across the board, right? We can bring real estate agents in here. We can bring recovered addicts, successful businessmen. We can bring them all. In the end, you're back against the wall. You found a way out of it. You explained how, and you explained the benefits of it, and you each presented a story of how that's worked out for you. And then there's always more.
Yeah.
There's always more in the future, right?
Yeah.
So don't be afraid to be a better version of yourself within those situations. And I'm just super grateful that Scott and Cade came on our show. And if you guys want to listen to their podcast, Pursuit of Property,
Pursuit of
Give 'em a
Property
listen.
podcast. Scott Farrow, Cade Berrett, our first official guests.
Dude,
thank
we
you.
are so honored.
Yeah, what a cool experience.
on, man.
I owed it. I owed it
Well,
to you guys.
that title will be yours
Hey,
forever.
there you go.
Thanks, guys. Appreciate it.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Boom.
Good.